We really felt like this time period around 2006, 7, 8 was important for us to revisit. It's a time where a lot of our fans that are with us now first found out about our band.
Walking Wounded was a really important time for us in a lot of ways. For one, it was us kind of solidifying to ourselves that we were going to be able to carry on after everything we had gone through. So personally, it was sort of like a triumph for us. It's also like one of our favorite records that we've done.
It felt like a really good opportunity to have an anniversary of a record that really represents kind of like the real coming into our own sound.
It's the first album with this lineup that we've had for 10 years, so you gotta do an anniversary, right?
And we decided that we didn't want to have it be a full US tour. We kind of wanted to just use it as an opportunity to recognize the fact that this was a milestone in our career without kind of overplaying it and making it a big blown out thing, where we wanted to kind of make it special and make it small and do kind of smaller rooms.
So it's just a cool opportunity to go out and get to play the entire album. It's a time where it was literally the first time we all recorded together, so I just think it's important to be noted, considering we're still a band and we still get to play shows. I think that's something I'm proud of, and I know the rest of the guys are proud of, because you don't see a lot of bands that are around for that long. So we're fortunate, and it's a cool time to just revisit.
It's weird to think of Walking Wounded as being a breakout record the way that 10-year anniversaries are for some other bands, because we're bigger now than we were when Walking Wounded came out, but for some reason it retroactively became like a really popular record to people.
Really, this is our one chance to look back on a turning point in our career and kind of give some of our fans what they want.
As a band and as people, I mean, it's like, it's a cliche to say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and that was really, I think, for all of us in our lives, that was like the moment we became hardened, and hardest thing any of us had ever gone through before or since, and getting through it, being able to move on, and that was really, I think that it shaped us a lot as people, and certainly as a band. And as far as the writing of the record, I think it was when I could speak from my lyrics, at least, where that was when the lyrics started getting more positive, strangely enough, after going through something kind of traumatic. The lyrics up until then were always like pretty bleak and dark, and I think that was, like I said, a moment in my life where I learned that you can get through things, and that your will and your strength can surprise you sometimes. And from Walking Wounded on is when I tried really to put more of a hopeful message in all the songs lyrically. And then the name of the record was something that Nick had brought up, that he overheard one of the first responders say. He had referred to us as the Walking Wounded, and we took that as a double meaning. There was the literal meaning, is obviously the way that the paramedics used it, but then also that, we kind of felt as a band we were kind of, we were still there, we were still going to do it, we still had our strength, and it seemed to really kind of fit the theme of the record.
When we got in our accident, it definitely was a big point in our career. At that point, we were just kind of not struggling to get by, but really trying to find ourselves. And I had just joined the band, and our old drummer John had just joined the band about a year and a half before that. So we were just out there working our asses off, and that tragedy happened, and it kind of just put the idea in our head that things could be taken away from us, and whether they're deserved or not. And it really was a point where I was in the hospital, and unfortunately John had passed away, and Anthony and Jack had the decision to make whether they wanted to go back on the road. And it was just something that from that point on, the decision to go back on the road that second was important to the band to go on forever, basically. You know, it all could have ended right there if it was just like, no, we're not doing it anymore. It was important for sure that that decision shaped the next, you know, through now, the next 10 years. So I think individually and personally, it just is, it's a life lesson that you can't really take things for granted, and appreciate your time while you have it, and have fun while you're around.
As far as how it shaped us as a band, I know that immediately post accident, it was a really continuing to play for me became very therapeutic and became a really good way for me to mentally deal with what had happened. And I think coming back together with Anthony doing acoustic stuff, and then with Nick coming back from being out of the hospital and finding Chris, really helped us bond more as a band, as people, as a band, and also as kind of a family. And I think that, you know, I think a lot of tragic experiences really can force people away from each other, or it can bring you a lot closer. And I think in our case, it really did make us become a lot closer personally as a band. It certainly changed our perspective on what was important to us, not only as people, but as a band. And I felt at that point, as I'm sure everyone else did, that we had kind of an obligation not only to ourselves and to our own mental health to kind of continue, but also, yeah, I think that I think that kind of persevering through that whole experience did sort of make us stronger in general. After the accident, we had, while Nick was in the hospital, we had a good friend of ours fill in on bass, and we had tried a couple of different drummers, and it wasn't until we met with Chris, when we had done a few shows with Chris, that we really felt like this was the right person.
Coming into the band was crazy for me because I personally didn't know Jack or Nick, so it was, you know, trying out, and then all of a sudden you're just in the van, like, you know, like this close to people you don't know, and you live with them for however long the Lions and Tigers and Bears tour was. So it was a crazy experience, but I was younger. I was 19, 20 years old, so it was just like getting to go out and just start touring was so exciting, and I was with all these new people and on a tour where there were, you know, multiple bands, and it was all set up, all legit, you know, and I don't remember being nervous. I don't remember feeling out of place ever. It always felt normal to me.
So this was the first record we did with Chris on board, and we've had the same lineup since then. And yeah, Chris was my buddy. I had only known him a little bit, and he's a couple years younger than all of us. I think he's 5 or 6 years younger than me. So he's always been the baby of the band. But I knew him then, and I think he was 20 when he joined the band, and I just knew that he ripped on drums, and he was a fun dude. So it was a point where we needed to figure out how we were going to move on as a band, and Chris had shoes to fill, but I don't think that it ever really became an issue for him to just be himself, and I think that was a big deal, and it helped us bond as 4 people, because it wasn't necessarily, hey, you need to be this, that's why we picked you. It was more like, we like what you are already, and we want to add you to the mix, and it's something that I think he's always adapted to, and has been such a huge part of our sound and our live show ever since he started.
It felt natural. I mean, Chris was just always such a perfect fit from day one, and we had, you know, nothing but inspiration at that point. And so writing the songs came really, really natural. You know, sometimes you labor to write songs, and sometimes you're struggling for inspiration, but there was absolutely no shortage of inspiration at that time.
My favorite song is "They're Not Horses, They're Unicorns." I think that's one song that once I heard that riff, I knew that it was is an interesting song, and it's something that I hadn't really previously heard come from Anthony's songwriting. And I think once we recorded it and we were pretty confident that people were going to like it, the second we started to play it and the record came out and people really attached themselves to that song.
How about Walking Wounded, the title track? It's always been a song I was really proud of. At the time, it's funny now because we've written so many songs like it since, and it's sort of become a staple in like what is the Bayside sound. But at the time, it was like self-titled was like a punk rock record, you know, and Walking Wounded was really when we started throwing these crazy ideas around. Like with I, we said, well, why don't we put a reggae part in it? And with Walking Wounded, I was listening to like Fiddler on the Roof and like, you know, like a lot of klezmer music, and I said, why can't the verse just sound like Fiddler on the Roof, you know? And we just had like, those were like ridiculous ideas at the time for us, and they worked. And I mean, Walking Wounded, that song, so you know, that song kind of embodies a lot of the whimsical aspects and the crazy left turns that have become like standard place in our music. And also, it's got a bunch of key changes in it, which is also something that was my first time like exploring that stuff, and that also became a big part of our sound moving forward. So that song for me, it was a milestone because it was the first time I tried a lot of things that became standard, even like 10, 12 years later, you know, still making records and still kind of using a lot of the same techniques I experimented on with that.
I'll go with the Excited first. I know that we do tend to play, because it is one of our more popular records, we do tend to play a lot more songs from that record and from self-titled. So the front, probably 2/3 of that record are songs that we do play fairly regularly. The latter third of that record has a lot of songs that we either have played very sparsely or in very unique circumstances or never have played. I know there are 2 songs on the record that we have never played together, or we haven't played together since we recorded them. And there are a couple of songs that Anthony and I have done as acoustic songs, but the latter third of that record, I'm really excited to play with a full band, and especially having 10 years of distance between writing it and now the way that we've all kind of developed musically. I'm really excited to hear, you know, with 10 years of basically practicing other Bayside songs, it'll be a really exciting opportunity to see how those songs sound with 10 years of experience behind us.
My favorite song on Walking Wounded is Popular Science, and I'm the most excited to play Popular Science. I don't know why it's my favorite song, I just like the way it feels. It's a mid-tempo song that kind of has its big moments, its smaller moments. It's my favorite song on the album just because I really don't have a reason why, and I love playing it, and I can't wait to play it.
Let's see. I think we definitely made a lot of friends during that time, and we revisited our friendship with Anne Boleyn around that time and did a tour with them, and that was a big turning point. As far as us kind of getting to find bands who sounded more like us that we were able to tour with, I always remember from about 2004 leading up until The Walking Wounded coming out, we kind of always played shows with bands that didn't sound like us, and it was always just such a drag because I think we weren't like punky enough for the punk scene. We weren't nowhere near screamo, but we were on a record label with a bunch of screamo type of metal-y bands, and we always wound up playing with those just because of our record label, even though we sounded like something totally different. So I think once The Walking Wounded came out and we got that tour with Anne Boleyn, that really helped us start to find our scene a little bit more.
That was like the first time in our career that we were getting like phone calls and emails where we were like, whoa, no way. Like, you know, we were in Rolling Stone for the first time, and we were in Spin for the first time, and the Duality video was in rotation on like MTV2 and Fuse, and every one of those emails was like a whoa, like I can't believe that. And we did Conan O'Brien and some like other like daytime TV shows on the music channels and stuff, and that was really like, yeah, that was all crazy stuff, crazy stuff we never thought would happen.
One of my favorite tours that we had done during that cycle was we had done a Victory Records tour that The Day to Remember was on, June, The Sleeping, so it was like a good friends tour. It was one of the first tours that we had done that had larger scale production where we were using lights, and we had more of like a stage plot, or more of a stage production set up with scrims and backdrops, and we were trying to employ things like costuming, and I used the word costuming lightly. It wasn't really like a kind of a flamboyant costuming, but it was more of a unified theme of what we were wearing on stage. So the whole tour had a very kind of a cohesive look and feel, which I thought was a really exciting thing to do as a band, and it ended up being one of our most successful tours. So I think that specific tour was one of my highlights as far as touring goes. We also got a chance to play we played on the Conan O'Brien show on that tour, so that was the only late night television spot we'd ever done, and that was exciting as well. That was good for friends and family to be able to watch us on network TV. We got a lot of friends and family phone calls after that.
All right. So after we recorded the album, we got to go on the Walking Wounded tour, which was like the first tour we really did where we had production. I don't know if, whoever went and saw it, we had like multiple scrims with different images of soldiers, and we had flags and we had lights. So that was the first tour that I ever went on that I was part of the band that had like production, and it was our headlining tour, and I was on the album. So that was really the first time that all kind of came together in my, what you would call, professional music career.
You never really know when you're putting out a record if it'll stick with our fans, and I think that it was really important that we grabbed everyone's attention on The Walking Wounded, but we kept everyone's attention. I think that was the biggest deal. It's like, yes, that's a record that people liked back then, but we easily could have fizzled out if we didn't work hard and constantly tour and build ourselves up to be what we were. And I think Walking Wounded is important, but Shudder, Killing Time, Cult, Vacancy, that whole, from Walking Wounded on, we worked hard for that. We worked hard to keep the fans that we made on that kind of on self-titled record and Walking Wounded, for us to be able to maintain all those fans for 10 or 12 years is certainly a goal of ours, and we're happy that it's working out.
I think most importantly is, like I said, that record is when I felt confident enough to try a lot of new stuff in my songwriting, and it paid off, and it really helped me as a songwriter, and it helped shape what became the sound of the band. And all these years later, I mean, we've been a band 17 years, we still have a career, we have never had to get other jobs, and we've never had to do ever. When Walking Wounded came out, about a week later is when we all moved out of our parents' houses and were able to support ourselves just from being in Bayside.
That's a difficult question to answer, because I feel like I shouldn't say I'm surprised, because I feel like that is a short sell of ourselves, but I'm always impressed and amazed that we have had the longevity that we've had, and I am certainly very grateful for that. It's just nice to know that something that we did 10 years ago still has a lasting effect on our fans, and it's something that people obviously want to see this album performed. And I know we've gotten a lot of heat from some fans who are upset that we're not going to be coming closer to them. And, as I mentioned earlier, this is something that we decided we wanted to keep relatively small scale and relatively intimate, being that it's for the fans, but it's also kind of for us as a celebration of what we had done, and as a celebration of us as our current lineup coming together. So it's always a little bit mind-blowing to me that we get to do that. We're actually sitting here talking about a record that we made 10 years ago that there is still a substantial interest in, and that from speaking with fans, knowing that it's a record that has had a lasting impact on them in their lives, and to many people still continues to have a lasting impact on, which is it feels really good.
The album affects me in a way where it's kind of whenever I go out of my way and kind of say like, oh, think about when you started in the band, think about however many years ago. That tour, that Walking Wounded tour, and recording that album are some of the clearest memories I have of being in the band. I don't know why. Maybe it is because of all the things I was saying of how like all this stuff kind of came together, so maybe that kind of subconsciously in my mind made me remember that stuff more. But I remember recording, I remember me and Jack finding this giant spider at the studio, and I remember the studio, I remember where we slept. I just for some reason, that period in time, I remember everything. I remember the tour. I remember a lot of the shows. I can't remember, like, if we do a tour now, I don't know where we were the day before, but I remember all that stuff, and I'm super excited to revisit it and get to play the entire album. There's definitely like 2 or 3 songs on that album we've never played. So it's like literally we recorded them and never played them ever again. That's fucking crazy, so it'll be cool to play some of that stuff we never even played that we recorded at that time.